Well, hello and welcome to Musings of a Texas Preacher Man. I'm Scott Fisher and I'm glad you've chosen to study with me today. And I do apologize for not posting a video yesterday on Monday. We're going to continue our study of the new heavens and new earth today. We're going to pick it up and look at what the Apostle John had to say in Revelation regarding the new heavens and new earth. We're going to be reading from Revelation 21 verses 1 through 11. We'll read through the entire passage and then come back and look more in depth at what it says. Verse 1, Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there's no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there'll no longer be any death. There'll no longer be any mourning or crying or pain. The first things have passed away. He who sits on the throne said, Behold, I am making all things new. And he said, Write, for these words are faithful and true. Then he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. He who overcomes will inherit these things, and I'll be his God, and he'll be my son. But for the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues came and spoke with me, saying, Come here, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Her brilliance was like a very costly stone, as a stone of crystal clear jasper. Now, as we've seen in our previous lessons, the new heavens and new earth is speaking of the full realization of the new covenant, the Messianic kingdom introduced by Jesus and consummated with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. John is shown the things that were to take place soon. Now, Jesus had told his disciples that there were some of those that he was speaking to who would live to see his prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple take place. It would be in that generation. And John writes Revelation within a few years of it actually taking place. Simultaneously with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, the removal of Old Covenant Judaism would be the new heavens and new earth, the kingdom. Now, in many of Jesus' parables, he spoke of this. Scripture speaks of a banquet, a feast, a marriage supper. These are all terms for the same event that would take place simultaneously with the prophesied destruction of Jerusalem. And we see it clearly in Jesus' interaction with the Roman centurion who approached him and asked that he heal the centurion's servant in Matthew chapter 8. Now remember, Jesus said he would go with the centurion to heal his servant, and the centurion responded that, hey, I too am a man under authority and in authority, and when I speak to the soldiers under my command and tell them to go or to come, they do it. And Jesus only needed to speak the word, and the centurion believed it would take place. Well, Jesus was blown away by this centurion's faith, so much so that he responded. This is in Matthew chapter 8, verses 10 through 12. Now, when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who were with him, Truly I say to you, I've not found such great faith with anyone in Israel. Now, that's significant because this centurion was a Gentile. I say to you that many will come from east and west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Now, same sentence, but the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into the outer darkness. In that place, there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, this is one of the clearest statements Jesus made regarding this heavenly banquet in the kingdom of heaven, and seated at the table in the kingdom of heaven are the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, along with many from east and west. These are Gentiles joining them at the table. And simultaneously, now look at this, simultaneously, the sons of the kingdom are being cast out. The casting out of the first century apostates of Israel, the sons of the kingdom, would be simultaneous with this heavenly banquet. In other words, this banquet is referred to as the marriage supper of the Lamb, the wedding of Jesus to his bride. So in Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, we see the new heaven and new earth, and John says, for the first heaven and the first earth passed away. This is the vision of post-destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And in verse 2, he sees, quote, the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. Now, I know that most of us have been told, and most of us believed, that the marriage was at the end of the world, the end of time as we know it. But clearly in Scripture, it occurs simultaneously with the casting out of the sons of the kingdom, which is the AD 70 destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. Now, why is a new Jerusalem needed? Why is a new covenant needed? Because, according to the writer of Hebrews, quote, when he said a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete. And at the time he wrote this letter, about 62 AD, maybe as late as 64 AD, he then said, but whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to disappear. Now that's Hebrews 8:13. Now the same can be said for Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem, was necessary because the literal physical city of Jerusalem was about to be destroyed, and it was in 70 AD. The New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven represents the marriage, the full realization of the new covenant happening simultaneously with the destruction of Jerusalem and the old covenant Judaistic system now disappeared. And in Revelation 21 verse 3, John continues, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be among them. Now, folks, that is the new covenant. That's the promise that was longed for and sought by the faithful of God throughout the existence of Old Covenant Israel. The ritual elements of the Old Covenant were pointing toward this fulfillment, this reality. Now, I know most of us have been told that this is, quote, when we all get to heaven in the sweet by and by. But the reality is that you and I now have full, unhindered, unlimited access to the presence of God right now. We're not waiting on that to happen. We have it. He has made his tabernacle among men. Now we are the temple of the Lord. This is Paul's teaching of the New Testament. We are, as Peter said, we are the living stones that are being built together into a spiritual house to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. That's 1 Peter 2:5. Peter goes on to say, this precious value then is for you who believe. But for those who disbelieve, the stone which the builders rejected, this became the very cornerstone. This is what all Bible prophecy revolves around, looks forward to, anticipates. and becomes reality when the old covenant system comes to an end, the end of their world. Now, throughout the Old Testament, this promise was reiterated that God would dwell among his people. The old covenant system, the tabernacle and the temple, represented his dwelling among the people, but only the high priest could enter into the most holy place once each year at the feast of the Day of Atonement. The new covenant would open up his presence to all people everywhere, unhindered, unlimited, 24/7 access. Significantly, the book of Hebrews compares and contrasts the tabernacle in the wilderness with the heavenly tabernacle, the new covenant reality. And in Exodus chapter 25, verses 8 and 9, the Lord is speaking to Moses about the construction of this sanctuary. He says, let them construct a sanctuary or a dwelling place for me, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I'm going to show you as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, just so you shall construct it. Now, that tabernacle in the wilderness was based on the true tabernacle in heaven. And when the temple was destroyed, had become obsolete, had disappeared, not one stone left upon another, the heavenly tabernacle, the heavenly Jerusalem, came down out of heaven, and God made his permanent dwelling place among men, among all people, people of every nation, every tribe, and every tongue. And not just for a single bloodline of people, and not limited just to once a year access, but available to all at all times through faith in Jesus, the promised one. And that's the new covenant. That's what we have. That's what we have the opportunity to experience. We're going to close out today's study right there. I want to invite you to join me here again tomorrow as we continue to unpack this passage in Revelation and look at the new heavens and new earth and how it unfolds in Scripture. Remember, let Scripture interpret Scripture. Well, I hope you'll join me right here on Musings of a Texas Preacher Man once again. I post a teaching 4 times each week, most of the time, on Monday through Thursday. I'll post a link on Facebook and Twitter, and if you click the subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen, you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. Well, I hope you'll go out and make today a great day. Be safe, be blessed, and I hope to see you right here again tomorrow.